their own set of conditions that they have to adapt to, and the rest of humanity has some other set of conditions. And absolutely, they could develop different traits, but
that exists right now. There are untouched tribes that live.
There's like a few, yeah.
So it is possible. Naturally, it is possible.
Well, yeah. I was assuming that we were talking about like humans on like a grand scale, like the entirety of humans. Like it very well could be the case that if these super isolated communities, absolutely, we could definitely diverge from them. But I suspect that probably won't happen because it's hard for communities to stay isolated for that long.
But that didn't happen with dogs, though. We didn't isolate dogs from other dogs. We just crossbreeded and new breeds came into existence. So you're saying you couldn't make a new breed of dogs now?
So selective breeding is precisely isolation. Now, the way that you do the isolation is you don't have to keep them like physically separated from each other because they're not going to like accidentally like have sex with each other. You just prevent them from breeding with each other, right? You only breed the ones that you want to breed together.
But when you look at like Japanese culture, Japanese people, there's plenty of Japanese people that are 100% pure blood Japanese that never crossbreeded with any other races.
Up until about 200 years ago or so.
There's still plenty that are 100%.
Well, no.
There's still...
Please. Up until about like 300 years ago or so, they just didn't really have any contact with the rest of the world. Or rather, they didn't really allow contact with the rest of the world. And then it opened up again like 150 years ago or so. And so like there was a period of time, like, I don't know, like 1,000 years or so, where they were pretty isolated. But 1,000 years is like nothing on an evolutionary timescale.
Hold on one second.
Bugaboo, can I have my water bottle, please? It's over there.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to see kind of the squirming, not necessarily that you're doing, but a lot of atheists do when approaching the question of, well, then why would all brains in humans be the same? We're all one human race if billions of years of evolution led to this point. Absolutely, we're not. Of course, we're not. If that's the case, we're definitely not. Like what is Darwin wouldn't accept that.
So absolutely, humans are not all the same. But the distinction we make by race is not the distinction that will talk about like the important distinctions, like internal organs and things like that, right? Because again, race where we talk about like nose shape and skull shape and skin color and all these things. Those are all very external features which change very rapidly and don't really correlate. The notion that like the races are different is like just not a very useful distinction.
Darwin doesn't agree with you about that, though.
I don't care what Darwin believes. He's dead.
You don't care what Darwin believes?
He's dead.
You care what he believes about a lot of things, though.
Not really. I care about the work that he did. I think the work that he did was important, but I don't care about the person. I don't care what he believed. I don't care what he personally believed.
But the work that he did led him to the conclusions that he did about the different races. So you just reject that. I think it's just this virtue signaling thing.
Well, I mean, do you have any like objections to the reasoning that I gave, or are you just like, just mad that I gave a reason rather than crying and pulling out my purple hair? Like,
no, I think that if no God, atheism, evolution, billions of years, of course humans are not one human race. Of course the different races are like different breeds, 100%. And that would explain a lot of the behavioral differences that we see.
That just doesn't follow.
It absolutely follows.
Not every population has like vastly different breeds. Not every species is composed of vastly different breeds. Like dogs are almost unique in that regard, dogs and cats really, and that's because we bred them to be that way. If you go look out in the wild and you go look at like, I don't know, like polar bears or whatever, all the polar bears are the same, right? If you go look at like, I don't know, kangaroos, all the kangaroos are the same. Well, there are different species of kangaroos, but if you look at one species of kangaroo, all of the members of that species are basically the same.
Right, but you have different, let's say, denominations of the species of kangaroo. They're not all the same.
No, you don't. That's the point.
But okay, so let's say with
the
apes,
distinction that we see in dogs, where you have like some dogs that are like 10 times the size of other dogs, that distinction only exists in dogs. Like that level of like a different phenotype only exists in dogs, and like.
But in chimpanzees, you have different behavioral patterns from, and not all chimpanzees are the exact same. Let's say it's not called breed, but of the same group of the species. There's different groups of the chimpanzee species, and they have different behavioral traits.
Is there evidence of this?
Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up a few days ago.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see it.
It's like interesting that we just don't apply it to humans, though.
Well, it doesn't apply to humans, just like how it doesn't apply to kangaroos, and it doesn't apply to polar bears. Like, it just doesn't, sorry. You're like picking and choosing. Dogs, they're really, really different from each other, therefore humans must be the same. It's just like smooth-brained. Like, no, most animals are not like dogs. Dogs are the exception here.
There are 4 subspecies of chimpanzees: the Western, Central, Eastern, and Nigeria Cameroon chimpanzee. And if you want to look up if there's different behaviors,
and what are the and you know that Homo sapiens sapiens is a subspecies of the Homo sapiens species, right?
Yeah, but we're talking about the chimpanzees.
Yeah, I know. So if you want to make an adequate comparison, what you would do is you would look at the distinct characteristics between one subspecies of chimpanzee and compare it with humanity, because humanity is a subspecies of Homo sapiens.
Okay.
There are other subspecies of Homo sapiens, like Homo sapiens neanderthalis, for example, but they're extinct.
Wait, let me look up one more thing here about this before I respond.
Okay.
Okay, so to clarify, 4 different subspecies of chimpanzees. Yes, they have different behaviors depending on the subspecies, and also, yes, they can reproduce. So perhaps there's just different subspecies, races of humans. Yes, we can reproduce, but the different races have different behavioral characteristics.
So how do you think that subspecies are demarcated?
I mean, I'm using that in a abstract notion of subspecies. I'm replacing subspecies with race.
Right. But so a subspecies is like a specific genetic dissimilarity, right? So like you would go look at the genetics of like these different subspecies of chimpanzee, and you would find that there are like 4 distinct genetically dissimilar groups, like sufficiently dissimilar that they have different features, like in a pretty significant way.
That's exactly with humans, though.
However,
I don't look like an Oriental.
You can say Asian, dude. What is this?
No, because Asian's also Indian. Asian is a lot. Asian's actually
you can say East Asian then.
What's wrong with? I'm being specific to the kind of Asian. I'm not talking about the brown Indian Asians. I'm not speaking about the East Russian Asians. I'm speaking about the Oriental Asians. Are you going to say that's racist or something, or like xenophobic?
I mean, it just makes you sound like fucking Mark Twain riding on a steamboat down the Mississippi River talking about your N-word friend or something. Like, it's just, It's just not a good look.
Okay, then the Southeast Asian population, I don't look like that. They do look different. And their culture is extremely different.
Sure, and but genetically, they're more similar to you than the different subspecies of chimpanzees are to each other. But the human race is one subspecies, right? There are other human subspecies, but they're just extinct now. There were other human subspecies.
So what's your evidence that the 4 subspecies of chimpanzees is less similar than
because they have the subspecies distinction. That's how we make those kind of distinctions.
Okay, you can call it whatever. Yeah, you're saying it's a subspecies distinct. There's a distinction of those 4 groups. Mm-hmm. So why are those 4 groups or less similar than I am to an Asian person?
I mean, you'd have to go look at exactly how the subspecies distinction was made, but I imagine it's genetic, that there's a bigger genetic difference.
So you just said that it's less similar, but you don't actually have concrete evidence that it's less
Well,
similar.
that's my understanding. Again, I'm not a biologist, and you're not a biologist either. But if you want to check, you can. If you have this question, I imagine that you would be interested in knowing what the answer is, right?
I just think you're getting squirmy around the idea that races could actually be biologically different in more ways than just skin color.
And you seem really driven by this idea that races should be biologically different in other ways than just
am I asserting that belief?
It sounds like you are. It sounds like you're trying really
What
really
have
hard
I
to
said
convince
that
me
sounds
that's
like that?
Well, it sounds like you've been trying to convince me that's what I should believe.
No, I believe we're all of equal value because God created us, but you believe that there's no God, so we evolved. There is no natural specific order to how things evolved. So why are humans distinct in not being subspecies, but every other species on the planet for the they evolved? I think that's just
not every other species on the planet has like a whole bunch of different subspecies.
No, not all. No, but I think that you have a bias here, a liberal bias that you don't want to accept that perhaps different races.
I'm not even a liberal. Like.
Okay, a leftist bias, it's left of center on the ideological.
An academic bias, perhaps. Someone who cares about facts. Yes, you're right. I do have a bias.
I just told you facts and you're rejecting
real world.
it.
What facts did you tell me? You told me.
I told you the different behaviors of the 4 subspecies of chimpanzees, et cetera, and you're like, oh, but they're less similar than you are to.
Well, yeah, that's typically how we make like
but you don't know
distinctions.
That, though.
Well,
you
so,
just made
so,
it, you made
so
it
you're
claim.
right. So RC, you're right. I don't know about the specific subspecies distinctions. However, one of the ways that we make other taxonomic distinctions, species, genus, family, subfamily, superfamily, and so on, is with genetics. So it is reasonable to infer that other taxonomic distinctions, like subspecies, would use the same type of distinction.
I don't really see how that's responding directly to how you can prove that we're less similar or more similar than chimpanzee subspecies.
How I can prove that we're more similar?
No, I'm saying your knee-jerk reaction was to say we're more similar.
It sounds like you're trying to convince me that I should believe that there are big, like, important distinctions between different types of humans. It sounds like that's what you're trying to convince me.
Oh, if there's no God and we evolved billions of years, 100, there's no question that there is. Of course there is. You think all races...
Why?
Why? Because different races up until modern times had absolutely no contact with each other for a very long time. So they evolved differently. They didn't evolve exactly the same. They had different environments, just like the different subspecies
tens of thousands of years is not a very long time.
Do you notice that the 4 subspecies of chimpanzees is broken up from Western, Central, Eastern, and Nigeria? So they grew up in 4 different places. So you're saying human beings that were evolving in different areas of the world for many hundreds of thousands of years didn't evolve differently?
I mean, they weren't really. Like, humans basically...
They literally were, though.
Humans basically stayed as one population, or rather spread out and then remingled and then spread out and then remingled a bunch of times.
The different races didn't, though.
Please. Humans basically did that up until like 60, 70,000 years ago. And then there was a branch out that never came back together.
But you're saying humans did this, but so did chimpanzees.
That's what humans did.
But what differentiates the 4 subspecies of chimpanzees?
I don't know if chimpanzees did that.
Of course they didn't, because there's 4 subspecies because they grew up in different areas of the world.
Yeah, so maybe they've been isolated for longer than humans have.
Maybe that's your bias coming through.
You're trying to convince me that I should believe something that you don't even believe. So why should I believe this unless there's evidence for it?
I'm saying that I'm trying to show you that your bias is in the way of accepting something that's possible.
There's no bias here. You're just not presenting any evidence for the claim.
I just did. These 4 subspecies
what evidence?
of chimpanzees...
The chimpanzees have nothing to do with how interrelated humans are.
Chimpanzees are our closest related relative outside of humans.
I agree. So I'm glad that you accept Darwinian evolution.
So the fact that they evolved in different areas of the world and evolved to be 4 different subspecies shows us that the races of different humans evolving in different areas of the world would all arrive at the same conclusion. But you're rejecting that premise.
No, it says it's possible. Yeah. It says it's possible. It doesn't say that that's what happened.
Oh, you think it's possible that humans might actually have biological differences outside of skin color?
I'm saying that could have happened historically. I don't think it did, though.
No, I'm saying right now. Do you accept that that's a possibility?
I don't think
that's
it can
your
happen
bias.
anymore.
That is your bias.
It's because we're not isolated anymore.
It doesn't. Even if we're not isolated, crossbreeding brings about different characteristics, as you see in different species of dogs. If you crossbreed these different chimpanzees, that'll bring about new behavioral characteristics. It doesn't mean that it never happened. You're rejecting that that's the case anymore. That's your bias.
So evolutionary divergence requires isolation. That's how evolution happens, right?
And different races were isolated for very long periods of time.
That's irrelevant for the question you asked. You asked whether it's possible now. You asked whether it's possible now, and we are no longer isolated.
But they were isolated, so
that's irrelevant for the question you asked. You asked whether it's possible now.
So for the times that they were isolated, is
about
it possible?
70,000 years.
Yeah. So
it seems to have not been enough time in order to cause that much genetic distinction.
You don't want to answer the question because it's your bias.
I just answered the question.
No, I'm saying before we crossbreeded and before we all mixed together, all the races mixed together, for those many tens of thousands of years, are you asserting that more than 70,000 years? But are you asserting that? Okay, it's more than 70,000 years. It's not 70,000 years and we all mixed together. That's not what happened.
How many thousand years was it?
Well, Earth is not even that old, so.
Well, yeah, so I don't know why you're saying that it's not 70,000 years.
Okay, so you're just saying 70,000 years. You're just throwing that number out.
No, that's like the anthropologically accepted like timeline as to when humans kind of spread out across the world.
Okay, so you're saying 70,000 years is not enough time for these different races of humans to have evolved differently?
Sorry, one sec. I have the puzzle thing. Yeah, so I mean, it's long enough for small distinctions to develop, like differently shaped eyes and ears and nose and skin color, sure.
But nothing with the brain.
Like I said, and I've mentioned this already. I don't know why. Like
you don't want to talk about the brain.
I'm literally talking about it right now. Internal features take longer to change than external features. And 75,000 years is not enough time to change the brain in significant ways. It just doesn't seem to be the case. It changed
very quickly with dogs. It didn't take 70,000 years to change the brain chemistry of dogs.
Do you have the memory of a goldfish? Because I literally explained why that's distinct in the case of dogs. Because natural selection and artificial selection are very, very different.
And also, what's your evidence that it takes longer than 70,000 years of isolated populations to evolve their brain differently?
The fact that it seems to be the case that the brains of different humans is basically the same. It's basically the same as other brains.
No, that's not true though.
Oh, that's not even true. The contrary? I mean, that's what I learned. But
the male and female brains.
The contrary, I'd like to see that. We're talking about the brains of different racial groups.
Yeah, but you're saying human brains all the same. Human brains
with the relevant distinction being racial groups, they are. Of course, there's sexual dimorphism.
Oh, human brains across different races are exactly the same?
I never said they're exactly the same.
So there are differences.
RC, are you this dishonest? No two human brains are exactly the same, obviously. But
are you saying that?
As far as what I learned when I was taking biology, when I was learning about it, which I don't know if you were paying attention to, the racial differences are essentially skin deep.
Oh, and perhaps maybe your biology teacher had a bias and wasn't actually
to the contrary? Or are you just going to cry and scream about racism?
No. See, you don't want to have this discussion. You don't.
Well, it seems like you're really, really keen on convincing me that I should be a racist when I've given you the reasons why I'm not. I've given you the reasons, the evidence-based reasons why I don't think that there is any actual distinction beyond skin deep.
Because that's your bias coming through.
Different so-called racial groups. And if you have evidence to the contrary, you should show me. But otherwise, why would I believe that? That has nothing to do with humans. It's unrelated.
Do you know how long that they were isolated from each other, the four subspecies? Because you said that it was longer. How many? You don't even know. See, that's the thing. You don't even know. And you just
do you know?
I can find out right now, but I'm not making a claim. I'm not the one making a claim. No, I'm showing that it's possible.
I agreed that it was possible, and then it seems to have not happened.
With humans, you don't. With humans, you don't.
I literally said it. You really don't remember. I literally said, yeah, it could have happened, but it didn't.
How do you know it didn't? I see different races behaving very differently from another. I see that. That's very evident.
I see different people acting very differently from one another.
No, no. I see races in general acting different. You don't see that?
What's a race?
There's like 5 races of humans.
So would you say that all sub-Saharan Africans are the same race?
No, I wouldn't say they're all the same race, but if they're 100% sub-Saharan African, then yeah, they are part of the same
Okay, because
race.
they're more genetically distinct from each other than you and I are from each other.
What does it have anything to do with behavior?
Well, the point is that there is a bigger genetic distinction amongst a single race, sub-Saharan African black people or whatever. There's more genetic variation there than there are across, right, like between like Middle Eastern people and like Northern Europeans.
But I see they're behaving different. I see the way Arabs behave, Asians behave, white people in Europe behave, and it's different behavioral patterns. You can scoff at that all you want. That's my observation. There's nothing wrong with the observation. I just recognize.
Do you have data to support this position, or should I just
same data that it's observational data? That's the same thing.
Well, it sounds like anecdotal. It sounds like an anecdotal story.
That's literally every scientist. They have anecdotal observational data.
Not really. Anecdote. The plural of anecdote is not data, by the way.
So the data that I'm presenting you is observational.
You're not presenting me with data. You're presenting me with anecdotes.
Okay. I mean, it's obvious you have a bias here. I get it. You want to reject the notion that, humans maybe could have evolved differently. No way. That's not possible. The only difference is a skin color. Nothing inside. Everything's the same. It's ridiculous to accept that notion if you're an atheist.
Well, that's a wild straw man that like atheists should believe that, but okay. If that's what you want to think, I guess. Do you still think that God shouldn't have caused the Holocaust, shouldn't have intervened in the Holocaust?
Oh, you were listening to that yesterday? No, God should not have intervened.
It was real bad.
It was real bad for the guy I was debating, yes. No, God should not have intervened because then he would be restricting our free will. You think God should have, if the God that I believe exists, let's say just for the sake of argument, if that God exists, and you're saying that it would have been good for that God to intervene and prevent the Holocaust from happening.
Yeah, under your worldview, yeah.
Under my worldview, okay. So then applying that same standard, would it be good for that same God to prevent any woman from getting an abortion?
Under your worldview? Yeah, probably.
No, I'm asking you because you're holding me accountable. I said for the sake of argument, since you're saying I lost that debate yesterday, because I didn't want to concede that God should have intervened. And you're saying that, well, the right position would be that God should have intervened to prevent the Holocaust. He should have stopped the free will of the Nazis and intervened and prevented the Holocaust from happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, then should that same God also have prevent any woman from getting an abortion or any homosexual from getting married?
I don't think so. Unless this God hates gay people and doesn't want abortions to happen.
No, he loves his creation. He hates sin. He does hate sin. And getting in and
okay, well then if this God exists, and that's the way that God feels about, say, gay people, then yeah, he should intervene.
No, he shouldn't, because then he's a ruthless dictator that's forcing us to do what he wants.
But he did intervene with Pharaoh.
But Pharaoh wasn't trying to unalive all the Israelites.
That makes it even worse for you, bud, because he intervened.
Pharaoh was not unaliving the Israelites.
Hold on, RC, hear me out. Pharaoh was only going to try to re-enslave them, which is less bad than genocide. Yet he intervened when he was just trying to re-enslave them, but he wouldn't intervene when somebody was trying to do a full genocide? Why would God intervene on a lesser crime but not intervene on a greater crime?
I don't know why God. First of all, he didn't intervene immediately with Pharaoh. He didn't. Pharaoh made the decision.
But he did intervene eventually, right?
Yeah. So Pharaoh was not successful, right, in what Pharaoh wanted to do. He was unsuccessful
because God intervened.
Sure. So Schmittler was also unsuccessful.
No, he wasn't. He was very successful.
No, he wasn't. He lost the war. He literally lost the war.
His goal was to get Jews out of Europe?
No, his goal was to destabilize the Soviet Union and get rid of communism from the world, and he was unsuccessful in that. So,
I thought we were talking about the Holocaust, not like general like World War II.
Okay, so Schmittler was unsuccessful in his goals. He didn't succeed.
Well, he didn't succeed in his goals about like the USSR, but he definitely succeeded in his goals about Jews.
Oh, so there's no Jewish people?
Like the population of Jewish people in Europe is basically zero.
Oh, so in the world, there's no.
His goal is to get Jewish people out of Europe.
Okay, so he didn't succeed. Wait. Germany's one country of Europe. Yeah. So of all the other countries,
there's like no Jewish people in like any of them. There's only Jewish people in England and France, really, in Europe. Like
so
those are the only countries that have Jewish people still remaining.
So here's what Schmittler wanted to end: Jewish people and their influence. Jewish people still exist.
No,
and
he wanted to get Jewish people out of Europe. That was his goal.
And there's still Jewish people in Europe, therefore still not successful.
The only places that there are Jewish people in Europe are in France and England.
That's not even true. You don't think there's Jewish people that live in Germany?
No, I mean there's obviously like some Jewish people who have like moved back and stuff, but like those are the only significant population centers. Like that's it.
There's 1.3 million Jewish people living in Europe. That's not nothing.
And they're all in France and England.
Okay,
there's like 10,000 Jews overall in the rest of Europe. So
Pharaoh failed. So did Schmittler. How do you know God didn't intervene? Schmittler didn't win the war. Schmittler wasn't successful in what he wanted, so he failed. How are you going to say that God didn't intervene?
Wait, no. I mean, if his goal was to, get rid of the Jews from like Europe, he basically succeeded.
No, he didn't, because there's Jews in Europe, so he didn't succeed. You keep saying like he succeeded, and he didn't.
Well, you think if Schmittler was alive basically succeeded.
So you think if Schmittler was alive right now, looking at Europe and looking at the world, you think, oh, yeah, my mission was successful?
He'd probably look at France and be like, bummer, that one got away. But then otherwise, he'd be like, yes, the European continent, I don't know what a fucking German, the European continent is free of the Jew. And he'd be like, aha, except France. But then he'd try to invade France.
You think he'd be happy with the state of Germany right now?
Probably not, but that has nothing to do with the Jewish people.
So he was unsuccessful.
His goals weren't only about Jewish people. He cared about other things.
No, it was also about...
With regards to the Jewish people, he basically succeeded, yeah.
Okay, so Schmittler was not successful.
With regard to, like, all of his
everything
goals,
that he wanted, he wasn't successful. Everything he wanted,
he didn't
succeed in any of it.
The fact that there's, like, basically no Jews left in, like, the entirety of continental Europe except France is, like, a success for him.
No, it's not. No, it's not, though.
Okay.
It's not a success. So you keep saying that he lost the war.
So wait a minute, does it count as a genocide if they only get like 90% of them?
They were in the process of being genocided.
Does it have to be 100% in order for the genocide to be?
No, it doesn't. There was a genocide.
So he did that. So he succeeded.
Yeah, but he wasn't successful
in his genocide.
No, he did not. No, he did not succeed.
Wait, but a genocide happened, right?
Yes.
If a genocide happened, then he was successful in making a genocide.
Happened. Oh, he was successful in the war, but he lost the war and he lost everything that he wanted to do. Hitler was not a success. If Schmittler was successful, the world would look extremely different right now. And he wasn't successful.
The fact that, so do you think that, putting aside the success, do you think that, like, let's put it this way. Let's say that you have two buttons, right? You can only push one of them. One button is stop the slave trade that's going on in, say, North Africa right now and the Middle East. Button just stops all of it, right? The other button is stop every single ongoing genocide in the world. Which one do you press?
Neither.
You can only press one, and you have to press one.
No, I'm not taking.
You would press neither? What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm not pressing a button. Okay. What? Would you rather save 100 million people or have to grape your mother to save 100 million people? Or those 100 million people will pass away if you don't grape your mother right now?
Wait a minute. I offered you two good options. One is ending slavery. The other is ending genocides. You're not causing anything by pressing either button. In either case, you're doing something good. It's just a question of which one's better.
They're both bad. What do you mean? Which one's better?
So, look, they're both currently happening. You can choose to stop one of them. Which one do you choose to stop?
And you said that it's only
Or do you just stop neither?
No, you're asking me which one is worse. Because if I select one,
Yes, I'm asking you which one is worse. Yes, they're obviously genocide is worse than slavery. Like, I think we can all agree on that.
No. Based off you have a subjective moral standard. You just subjectively pick and part, oh yeah, this is worse because why? Because you feel it's worse.
Wait a minute. Okay, do you think that genocide is not worse than slavery?
You've already agreed to me that the balance to life on Earth would be better with less humans. Therefore, genocide is actually good for the life on Earth absent humans.
Okay, clipped and shipped. RC just said genocide is good.
According to your worldview, yes. You can.
Well, that's not my worldview, but that's a cool straw man.
It is. You said that the life on Earth is better with less humans. You said this.
I said the other organisms
yes.
might thrive better.
Yes, from that perspective, then genocide would be good from that worldview. For the other.
Okay, but that's not my worldview. So why would I believe that?
Because we cause more destruction than any other species on the planet.
Okay.
So less of us is better for them.
Why should I care about that?
Because you believe in that.
I believe that. Wait, why should I care about why should I care about what the other organisms are?
Because we have two different fundamental beliefs. You believe that we just evolved to this point and we're causing destruction to all the life around us, for the most part. I believe they were created for our benefit.
Okay.
We're not causing destruction. This Earth was created for human beings' benefit from the beginning.
So we're causing destruction. How does that therefore entail?
No. They're subservient to us. They were created to be subservient to human beings.
You're just strawmanning my position. Like, why would I believe, just because, like, yes, I agree, humans are destructive to many organisms. Why would I then therefore believe that it's better,
because
that it's more moral for less humans to exist?
Because less humans equals less destructive behavior to all the other species.
Why should I care about that? Why should I care about?
Because you said that you said from your moral standard that it's immoral to cause harm to other species on the planet. So if you have less humans causing the harm,
I never said that.
You did say that at the beginning of our conversation.
Nope, I never said that.
Oh, so you don't think it's immoral to cause harm to other species?
I guess it depends on the species. Like, if we're causing harm to like humans, that's
you do hold
bad.
that it's immoral to cause harm to certain species that you deem that it's harmful to cause harm to.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do agree with me, so I don't know why.
Certain things that I value and certain things that I don't. For example, I'm kind of sad if you chop down a tree, but I'm not like morally disgusted.
Right, so you get to pick and choose what life.
Yes, that's what values are.
Mm-hmm. But your values are subjective to you, and your opinions change from like year to year. You don't hold all the same opinions you did 5 years ago.
My opinions are pretty rigid.
Your values have never changed?
Not that much. You know, once you become an adult, your values don't change much.
Okay, that's not what I asked. I said, have your values ever changed?
I mean, sure they have.
Okay, so fair enough. Okay, all right, man. So your values change. They're subjective to your worldview. That sounds anecdotal to me. Exactly. So when
anecdotal, that's a category error, my guy.
No, you anecdotally have viewed life, and you have arrived at certain values based off your preferences.
That's not what
hyper subjective.
What?
That is an anecdote. You have your own personal life experiences. Mm-hmm. Perhaps, maybe I'm just hypothetically. Maybe you were spanked as a baby or spanked as a child, and you don't want to. Your value is to not spank children when you have kids of your own because of your own personal experiences. That's subjective. That has concreted one of your values.
It is absolutely subjective. That's what values are.
No, values from God are objective. And when you rip God away, yeah, God's values are not.
Prove that God exists.
No, I can give you my evidence to why I believe God exists, but there's no proof for or against God. There's no absolute proof if that's your standard of proof.
No. Okay, give me convincing evidence.
Life on Earth. Yeah, life on Earth existing is evidence in favor that we were created.
How do you figure?
Because you use the same evidence to say, well, it's obvious, looking at life on Earth, it's obvious that we weren't created.
I don't say that. I don't know why you keep strawmanning me.
Because you're an atheist. I'm an atheist. That's what you're saying.
That's never an argument I've ever made. Like it seems like, do you work at a farm because you're really good at building straw man?
The good one.
I mean, you've done nothing but strawman me this entire conversation. I don't think you've accurately represented my worldview.
You literally
once.
straw man so many of my positions. You're like, oh, it sounds like you just want me to be racist. When did I say that? You just straw man positions of mine that I hold, and you're like, oh, you just want me to believe that a genocide's actually good. No, I'm just criticizing or I'm questioning your belief system. That's what you guys do to us all the time.
You were trying to tell me what my belief system should entail, and when I tell you, no, actually, it doesn't entail that for XYZ reasons, you just kind of go, nuh-uh.
That's literally what atheists do to Christians all the time. Atheists want to criticize the Christian worldview, but when it happens to you guys, you flounder.
If you want to make an internal critique, that's fine, but an internal critique can't start from a straw man, and that's all you've been doing all night.
What straw man position did I start with in any one of my arguments?
You literally made one just now when you said that because I'm atheist, I have to view the destruction of environments as worthy of reducing the human population.
No. I asked you questions and arrived at that conclusion. You agreed to me that less humans equal less devastating consequences to the life around us.
Yeah.
So that equals less humans will mean less devastating consequences to the life around us.
That doesn't mean that I should think that that's bad.
So you just agreed if there's less humans, that will be good for certain causes, like less consequences.
Sure. It doesn't mean I have to care about that.
Dude, okay, man.
It doesn't follow from my views that that's like a morally bad thing or a morally good thing.
So you're saying genocide is bad?
Yes. I think it's bad.
Okay, genocide is bad because you're unaliving humans without their consent.
Yeah, that's one way you can put it.
Okay, abortion's genocide. Literally, you're unaliving humans without their consent.
I don't think that they're objects capable of consent.
But that's not what you agreed to, though. You agreed ending human life without their consent.
I don't think that fetuses can give consent. I don't think that fetuses are human beings. I don't think that they're human beings.
Yeah, you're right. A baby can't give consent at 6 months in the uterus. You know what? A baby also at 2 months old outside of the uterus can't give consent either.
Well, no, I don't think that they're human beings at like.
You don't think 2-month-old babies are human beings?
No, I don't think 3-month-old fetuses are human beings.
Okay, but you said that they can't give consent. Therefore, that's why.
No, they're not the kind of objects that could even in principle give consent.
Neither can a 1-month-old baby.
A one month old baby could in principle give consent if they could like talk, but they can't. So
how could they, but they can't.
They're an object that could in principle give consent because they have an internal subjective experience.
What the hell are you saying right now? They can't give consent. So in reality, not in principle, in reality, they cannot give consent.
This is such a hard conversation for you, isn't it?
No, for you it is, because a 6-month-old fetus, from that point of view, is no different than a 1-month-old baby.
By the way, I generally am not fond of like abortion past like the 5-month mark. So I don't know like what you think my position is.
So what happens from month 4 to month 5?
There's certain brain structures that develop that seem to be necessary for conscious experience.
So you're saying conscious experience is what's necessary to give human life value?
Yeah, to turn them in from, not much more valuable than like a tree to something that's valuable because it has a subjective experience.
So subjective experience is what gives life value?
It's what I think gives human beings value.
You think, you feel, I get it. You think it, you feel it.
Yeah, it's called humility, RC. I would suggest you try it.
But that's your whole argument. I think and I feel this, therefore it is.
I was telling you my position, so when I give you my position, it's going to be, yes, my position is that XYZ, or in other words, I think that XYZ.
I get it, but your whole worldview is based around I feel, I think, therefore if. Why should I accept that? Why should anybody accept your
I'm not asking you to.
Worldview?
You're the one who came on to try to convince me to believe in your God.
You literally have him an atheist above your head.
Yeah,
you're trying to
it says, I'm an atheist. Can you read the rest? Your God isn't real.
Your God
Can you convince me to believe in your God?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So you're trying to convince people.
No, I'm not trying to convince you.
You're not trying to convince people that God isn't real.
Not explicitly. The prompt is bringing people to try to convince me otherwise.
Your God isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
So that's trying to. Okay, dude.
That's my position. Anyway, RC, anything else, or should we call it there?
We can call it there, man.
right.
I'm gonna go get food. I'll
Take
talk
care,
to you
bud.
later.
Ah, shoot, I'm muted on YouTube. Dang it. Thanks for letting me know. Look, y'all, RC is good content. Say what you like about him. He's good content.